So apparently the mainstream media is lying to us about the Breonna Taylor story, at least according to BlazeTV, Glenn Beck specifically. He's going to be talking about all of the lies that have been put out by the right-wing media to try and demonize Breonna Taylor and excuse the actions of the police officers. We have a very specific healthcare method that frees people down with heart failure. That's awesome. I've heard about that. Let's see what he has to say.
Breonna Taylor.
Say her name. My gosh, the racism just continues.
Now, is that an argument? Because that's what I see substituted for an argument.
Yeah, yeah.
No, racism continuing is an argument. And it seems to work. That's awesome. Sorry, in the previous segment, we were talking about healthcare. Or in between segments.
A bunch of names of people who had issues with police.
I do want to say I like their microphones. I like the aesthetic of that microphone. I've just got a cheap one, but I do like the microphones.
You know, whether some of them justified, some of them not. Like the entirety of the argument is like Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Eric Garner, and it's like there's a whole range of stories you're talking about.
We need solutions.
Yeah, people who have been murdered by police. I'm sorry, is there an issue with bringing awareness to people being murdered by police in America? I know people on the right have an issue with it, but that's like the whole conversation. That's the whole thing that Black Lives Matter is about, is trying to fix that problem. And just listing off all of these different cases and then talking about how the individual cases are different, despite the fact that they had the same outcome, doesn't invalidate the argument. I know you're going to pretend that it does, but it doesn't. What? Where are you going with this?
Some of them justified, some of them not justified, some of them involving police, some of them not. So you're for
no-knock raids in the middle of the night?
No. Can we clear some of these things up?
You're just for shooting innocent women in the back or however, in the middle of the night, going in.
So the right-wing media is trying to propagate the lies spread by the Attorney General that was assigned to the case, where they said that the police knocked and announced their presence at the door when they invaded Breonna Taylor's house, that Breonna Taylor was on the warrant for arrest for drug trafficking, and that the boyfriend shot at police knowing that they were cops. All of those are false. They have 1 out of 12 witnesses saying that the cops announced their presence. All the other ones said that either there was no knock or that they simply knocked on the door and then knocked the door down. Saying that the boyfriend didn't know that it was police coming into their home because they were plainclothes officers. They were not in uniform, and they did not announce that, 1, they were police, or 2, why they were entering the home. So he grabbed his firearm that is legal for him to own and defended his home against what he perceived as an intruder, which is why he's not in jail right now. They ruled that he was acting in self-defense. Breonna Taylor, not sleeping in her bed. She was standing in the hallway because she got woken up by the knocking, by the door being knocked down, because they blew the door off the hinges, and then they shot into the house, hitting her over a dozen times, and then let her bleed out on the floor for 20 minutes without giving her medical attention. And the only cop that got charged was charged with a reckless endangerment, I think, for shooting the wall of a neighboring apartment, because he showed up after the fact and just started firing into the house. Everything that they're going to say here, pretty sure is going to be a lie.
No knock raid, just shooting her.
Can we?
That's what I'm hearing.
This is one of those situations where if you know what happened.
The cops were initially, I forgot to mention this, the cops were initially issued a no-knock warrant, and it was then changed to a knock and announce warrant. They claim that they knocked. There's a couple of witnesses that say that they did knock, and they claim that they announced. There's only 1 out of the 12 witnesses that came forward that said that they announced themselves. All other 11 said that they didn't. So it was changed from a no-knock to a knock and announce warrant, and it was not an arrest warrant for Breonna Taylor, it was a search warrant for the apartment because they believed that she was storing drugs there. And lo and behold, they didn't find any drugs in the apartment at all. The reason why she was under suspicion is because her ex-boyfriend was involved in drug trafficking and the sale of drugs, or something like that. He was involved in moving drugs, and they thought that he was storing drugs at her house despite the fact that they had broken up and she had a new boyfriend that she was living with. That's why they were at the apartment. They weren't there to arrest Breonna Taylor. They didn't have any evidence that Breonna Taylor was involved in the drug trafficking. They were just going there to search it, and she ended up dead.
In the story, it is impossible to adopt the things and viewpoints that Black Lives Matter and every NBA player apparently have.
No, it's not. You just refuse to do so because you need to hold on to your racist views. You need to be able to justify your hatred of black and brown people to yourselves. So you can't accept what's actually happening in the country.
A guy who won't say her name. Okay,
Breonna Taylor.
Go ahead. Tell us the story, Stu.
First of all, there's a rumor that they went to the wrong house. No, they didn't go to the wrong house. They went to the correct apartment, the one they were supposed to. It's on the warrant. They had a warrant for that address.
But how do we know that?
Well, it's...
This is true. There was a rumor going around that they were at the wrong apartment. The reason why that rumor came about is because originally it was thought that they were looking for the ex-boyfriend, and that they were looking for him specifically, and he was already in custody when they broke into and murdered Breonna's apartment and murdered her. So that part is true. Her apartment was on the warrant. However, it was just a search warrant, and it was a knock and announce warrant, not a no-knock warrant.
On the warrant. So, I mean, they went to the right address.
So police doctored warrant. Got it.
No. And we also know there's this big thing about, well, there's a no-knock warrant.
Exactly right.
Now, there was a no-knock warrant issued in the case. However, they didn't utilize it. Okay. So that's a big problem. We know for a fact with 100% certainty that they did knock.
Really?
No, you don't. No, you don't. You have a couple of witnesses saying that they thought that they heard them knock. You have 12 witnesses that came forward. One of them said that they announced themselves, and a couple of them said that they knocked. The other ones just reported that the police were there. You don't know for 100% certainty that they knocked. Also, the warrant was, originally issued as a no-knock warrant, but then it was changed to a knock-and-announce warrant. They didn't just have a no-knock warrant and choose not to. They didn't just choose to knock and announce their presence, which they didn't do. They didn't announce their presence. They may have knocked, but they didn't say it was police and then just broke down the door. But they didn't just choose out of the goodness of their heart not to. The warrant was changed.
Really? Do we know that because police said they knocked?
Yes. And
yeah, of course. Yeah, the police lie. They lie to cover their asses and the asses of their fellow officers. It's called the blue line of silence, and you don't break it, which is a big part of what BLM is protesting over.
Also, Kenneth Walker, the guy, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, that he also said he heard the banging, and a separate neighbor.
Yeah, he heard them banging down his. He said that he heard the banging of them knocking down his door. He never said that they announced, and banging doesn't sound like knocking to me. It sounds like a door being knocked down. Just my 2 cents on that.
Who came out to say, what the heck's going on? There's a lot of loud banging going on in this door out there. And then the police said, get back in your apartment. So we know with 100% certainty.
But we only know from the guy who fired on police.
We knocked on the door with the battering ram.
And the neighbor. Those are the only witnesses that we have.
And the police, and 3 police officers.
Okay.
Well, I don't believe the police officers.
The police officers.
Yes.
They're all corrupt.
Yes.
Okay. Right. But they all agree on this. So that's a big.
Well, they're probably lying. But the guy who shot was inside. He wasn't lying, and the neighbor I trust, but I don't trust.
The guy inside who defended his home. What is with these conservatives that are so pro Second Amendment that say that you need a gun to defend your family and defend your home from intruders? Why do they suddenly flip the switch when it's a black guy? Why do they suddenly flip the switch when it's police getting shot at because the police are breaking into somebody's house without announcing that they're police and not being in uniform? If somebody wearing khakis and a t-shirt or jeans and a t-shirt kicked down my door, I'm shooting at them. If it turns out later that they're police, sucks to suck, nerd. You should have come in uniform. I'm sorry. I'm going to defend my family. And you know how we know that Kenneth Walker didn't know that they were police? He's not in fucking jail for shooting police. It was ruled self-defense.
That's the police.
Now,
Got it.
If you've just seen this on sports broadcasts or from dumb politicians,
I like to get all my news from both of those sources.
Oh, no kidding. So
and MSNBC, which I think is the combination of the two.
Yes, that is actually
pretty
much the combination.
Every news that disagrees with me is fake news.
You might not know that Breonna Taylor, in the past, before this incident, had dated a guy, Jamarcus
whatever
Glover, who was a known drug dealer. Okay.
Yes, she previously dated a drug dealer, broke up with him, and was in a new relationship when this happened.
And so the reason they got the warrant was for Jamarcus Glover, who was at a different place, and Breonna Taylor's apartment they wanted to search. They did not accuse Breonna Taylor of a crime. They were just, the accusation or the belief was that they used to date, they had seemingly broken up, but they were still kind of in contact. He had come over to her house a couple times.
It's not weird to be in contact with your exes. I'm still friends with some of my exes on Facebook. So if this was a search warrant that they were going to go and serve at this address, why did they go in plain clothes? Why didn't they go in uniform, knock on the door, announce themselves, and say, we have a search warrant for this address? Why did they have to knock down the door in plain clothes and in such a manner that the boyfriend, Jamarcus, thought that they were just intruders, that this was a home invasion? Why didn't they just execute it in uniform as a search warrant? Why did they have to be all extra about this and end up killing somebody and letting her bleed out on the floor for 20 minutes without giving her medical attention? Things would have been much different if the police had handled this properly. There was no reason for them to not announce their presence as police officers, and there was no reason for them to not be in uniform.
Times, maybe to pick up a package.
Speed this up. This is going to be a long video.
That maybe he was getting drugs or money sent to her house and using it sort of as a safe house because she didn't have a criminal history. There was no reason she did anything wrong.
There's nothing that she did wrong, and they didn't accuse her of doing anything wrong. In fact, the belief could have been that she was maybe abused.
Right.
And she's just hiding stuff at her house because the drug dealer boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, is beating her up and is abusive.
She doesn't want to piss off her ex-boyfriend who's a drug dealer, which would be a sensible motivation.
Sure.
But the police's what are you gonna do? The police motivation there is to go in and see what is in the house.
Right.
Is he hiding drugs? Is he hiding money? What's going on?
So what they're doing here, they're trying to further villainize the ex-boyfriend by painting all drug dealers as inherently violent people. Back in the day, many years ago, I used to be friends with people that sold drugs, predominantly marijuana, but I used to be friends with people who sold drugs. And out of the probably 5 or 6 people that I knew that did, only one of them would I even consider to be potentially violent or would have give pause to if I thought they were in a bad mood. Not all drug dealers are violent, and there was no indication that Breonna Taylor was under the thumb of her violent ex-boyfriend or that he was abusing her in any way and forcing her to hold drugs. Especially no body cam footage, that none of them were wearing a body cam, and yet it was released on the 9th, it was released a few days ago, so not the 9th, a few days ago that there was body cam footage that was leaked during the raid. How did they break down the door? Pounding at a battering ram. Okay, yeah, so they used a battering ram to get into the apartment, to break down the door. Yeah, there's going to be banging when they use a battering ram. And all that was reported was banging. There's a difference between banging and knocking. There's a very distinct difference between banging and knocking, and you bang on a door when you use a battering ram. So yeah, people heard banging. Pretty sure it was the battering ram that they used.
Police. Now, the neighbor confirms this, that they identified themselves as police trying to come into the door.
One out of the 12 witnesses came forward way after the fact, months later, saying that the police announced themselves. 1 out of 12 neighbors said that the police announced themselves, and they didn't come forward with this information until just recently, months later. I'll show you the difference between banging and knocking. Hell yeah.
Kenneth Walker, the current boyfriend of Breonna Taylor.
The good guy, no charges, nothing wrong with him, nothing.
Yeah.
Clean.
They're in bed. It's 3 a.m. or whatever. They're in bed. They hear the banging. They both wake up.
Right.
They stumble out of their bedroom down the hall. They're looking at the front door. He realizes that she's got a boyfriend who would be pissed off that he was there, and also is a drug dealer and with a known criminal history.
Right.
No, she has an ex-boyfriend that may have been pissed off that he was there, and he heard banging. If I hear somebody trying to knock down my door, kick in my door, use a battering ram on my door, I'm grabbing my AR, or I'm grabbing my Taurus. One of the two, whichever one's closer. It's what I would do. Yes, it's a sex joke. Everybody gets that, honey.
And if indeed she was in an abusive relationship,
and yes, I have a Taurus. I'm a poor.
Just afraid of him.
Yeah.
He was there. He would have a gun. He's going to shoot because he has a right to defend himself in his own home.
And he's a legal gun owner.
Right.
And this is an important part of this, legal gun owner. So
Okay, they're going to harp on this. They're going to harp on him being a legal gun owner, it seems, and him having the right to defend his property. Why are they okay with him grabbing his gun and firing on someone that he believed to be breaking into his home if the police announced themselves as police? Why would this be okay with them if he should have known that it was cops? Leads me to believe that they didn't announce that they were police. Kind of sus there.
He obviously, as I would, by the way, went to go get his gun because if he doesn't know it's police,
even if he does know it's police, you would still be afraid that maybe that's the drug dealer just saying
yelling police.
You
right.
don't know.
So
That's another point. Like, if the police, which I don't believe, did announce themselves, it could have been somebody else, and they were in plain clothes. Even if they did say police, and again, I don't believe that they did, but even if they yelled, "Police, open up," as they were knocking the door down, it would not be unreasonable for him to not believe that it was actually the police, because anybody could say that. If they were in uniform, that paints a different story. It paints a different picture. Tells a different story, but they weren't in uniform.
He believes it's Jamarcus Glover breaking in to abuse Breonna Taylor. So he tries to defend himself.
And her.
So after whatever distance of time, they decide, okay, no one's coming to this door. We're breaking the door down. The police knock the door in. As they knock the door in, he believes a drug dealer's coming in to kill them or abuse them in some way. He does what I think is a completely defensible thing in the circumstances, which is shoot at the person breaking into his house at 3 a.m.
Right.
Right.
I have to tell you, if somebody broke into my house at 3 o'clock in the morning and it was police, I'm not sure I would believe it, because if I were innocent, if neither of these people had anything, they have no criminal record, they have nothing.
Right.
So that would be me. That would be you. If somebody breaks in at 3 o'clock in the morning and they tear down my door, and I'm afraid of somebody else, I know somebody else is coming, for me, I absolutely take a gun and I shoot. Now, you shouldn't shoot without knowing, but that's what happens, and that is why we have a castle doctrine. You have a right to defend yourself in your own home.
Okay, then why do you have an issue with... Why don't you take issue with Breonna Taylor's murderer walking scot-free? If you believe the boyfriend was justified, if you believe that they had every reason to believe that there wasn't police at their door, even if you follow the narrative that the police are trying to put out, that they announced themselves and all this other shit, if you are on their side, why do you not have a problem with Breonna Taylor being dead? Why do you not have a problem with her murderer walking scot-free? Why make this video? If you are on her side, why make this video and title it "The Mainstream Media is Lying About Breonna Taylor's Story"?
Actually, at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right. And so it was... now, it doesn't mean it worked out perfectly, but it was a totally understandable response from Kenneth Walker's position in that moment. Right. He thinks he's being attacked. Someone breaks his door down. He fires one shot. And this is something that is like, I would say, 99% of people who talk about Breonna Taylor don't know. But this is agreed upon not only by the police, but also Kenneth Walker, the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor. He fired first and actually hit the officer.
Right.
So think about what just happened now from the officer. He
shot at an intruder and hit them in the leg. You're supposed to aim center mass, but he shot at an intruder and hit them, and they didn't leave.
Perspective. They are trying to break down a door, which they assume, they believe, is potentially has drugs and stuff inside, which, you'd think people were going to hide it or whatever. When they break the door down, they get shot by someone. The one Officer Mattingly, looks down the hall. He sees 2 people at the end of the hall. Can't really make them out. The only thing he can make out is a gun, and he sees a flash of the gun and then feels the heat on his thigh. He gets shot in the thigh. He backs up. What the hell do you think a cop is going to do in that situation? He's just been shot.
Stop. What do you think anyone who is carrying a gun legally is going to do?
Leave. If you are breaking into somebody's house with a firearm, you're not carrying that gun legally. If the person is defending their house and you have 2 brain cells to rub together, which if you're breaking into somebody's house with a gun, you probably don't. But if you have 2 brain cells to rub together and you break into somebody's house and they shoot at you, unless you have a death wish, you leave. But no, the cops just riddled the house with bullets, shooting her a fuck ton of times, leaving her to bleed out on the floor again for 20 minutes without medical attention because they were searching for drugs after not announcing themselves, or, if you want to believe their story, announcing themselves, breaking down a door in plain clothes. If they were in uniform, pretty sure he wouldn't have shot at them. Why are you siding with the cops on this one? Why? I would never break into somebody's house. I would never break into somebody's house with a gun. But if I did, and they shot at me, whatever's in that house that I'm trying to get to, not fucking worth it. I would leave. Why didn't they just leave and come back in uniform and serve the warrant like a normal person?
If someone
or a normal police officer, I guess,
shoots you and you have a gun, you shoot back.
Right.
That's any human being.
That's only legal in a stand your ground state. In a castle doctrine state, you can only stand your ground if you're in your own home. If you're in public and somebody shoots at you, you are required to leave. You are required to retreat. You have a duty to retreat.
Any human being.
So, and think about this for a second, how this is shown as supposedly some big example of racism by police. It is not even clear they could make out the race of who was shooting at them. But again, whoever it was, no matter what race.
This isn't about the cops being racist and murdering Breonna Taylor because she was black. It's the fact that they murdered Breonna Taylor and got away with it. And it happens again and again and again in cases where a person of color is killed. That's the problem. It's not that the cops killed her because she was black. It's the fact that they're getting away with it, and it's another black person that was killed by police that were not held accountable. That's the whole problem with this issue. If the cops had gone to jail, if they'd been arrested immediately, or even eventually arrested and faced murder charges, you would not see riots and protests across the country again. If the cops had been held accountable, you wouldn't be having this issue.
It was actually shot a cop. I think it's defensible from his position why it happened, as we just laid out. But when you shoot a cop, what the hell do you think is going to happen?
So stop, because that I think is going to be misheard. Here's what we no.
Go ahead.
So here's what I think we should what needs to be said. Let's look at this from 2 points of view. One, he was justified. He was charged with a crime. The shooter was charged with a crime, and then it was dropped. That's normal.
Yep, very. People think that's a big sign of racism too. No, it's very normal.
If I shoot someone.
How is him not being charged with a crime and then it being ruled self-defense racism? That everybody was happy about that. I have not seen a single person on the left being upset that he was charged with a crime and then almost immediately the charges were dropped and he was set free because he was rightfully defending himself, his home, and his family. Not a single person on the left has taken an issue with that. How is that a sign of racism?
Somebody in my house, if
you are literally inventing a narrative to try and demonize BLM. Inventing shit. Making shit up because you know you don't have an argument.
Shoot somebody in your house. Plan on spending a year in court in hell, okay? Because they're going to investigate all of it, okay? Now, they have witnesses because there were cops that were there. So they could witness and say, yep, that's exactly what happened. This was a justified shooting on his part.
On the boyfriend's part.
Absolutely justified. These cops are not the cops that are doing the investigation. These are there just serving the warrant and searching the house. They don't know all the details. They don't have an axe to grind. They were just the guys assigned this job. Now, period. Separate issue. Cops come in. They knock. Look at it only from their point of view. The cops, they knock, they identify themselves. They are going into a place that they have been told could be hostile because it could have a drug dealer inside. And whether he's violent or not, I don't know. But they suspect that maybe if he's there, they knock, they identify. They knock, they identify. Then they took...
They did not. You keep hammering on this shit. You keep hammering on this lie that the cops knocked and identified and knocked and identified and knocked and identified. You have one witness who months later said that the cops identified. Nobody else for months said that the cops identified themselves, despite the fact that that was the narrative that the police department was trying to push. It wasn't until right before the case went to the grand jury that you suddenly had this 12th witness that came forward and said, no, yeah, the cops identified themselves. And you even said earlier in this video that even if they had identified themselves, that it would be reasonable for him to believe that it was somebody who was lying to try and get access to their house and try to do them harm. Even if what you're saying is true, he still justified Breonna Taylor's death as still a murder. Because when you, in a stand your ground state, if somebody threatens you and you pull out your firearm and shoot them, you are required to give them medical attention if they're not dead. If you don't blow their brains out immediately and they are immediately dead, you are required to give them medical attention. Otherwise, you could be charged with manslaughter or murder. If you defend yourself and just stand there and watch them bleed out, you could be charged with murder. You have to give them medical attention. The cops let her bleed out for 20 minutes and didn't give her medical attention, and she died. Even if that was the only thing that was wrong about that situation, the cops should still be held accountable for it. There's a fuck ton more that was wrong about it. But even if that was the only thing that the cops did wrong, was not giving her medical attention when they shot her mistakenly, or a case of mistaken identity, or whatever, if the cops had shot her and just let her bleed out for 20 minutes, the cops should still go to prison.
The door down, the minute that door is open, somebody in the dark shoots at them. Looking at it from their side, their shooting back is 100% as justified as the person on the other side of the door.
Yep.
This is, at this point, what happened in there was not anything that you can change. There's no reform that will change that, because you have two people seeing something from the...
Reform that you could take is banning no-knock warrants and requiring body cameras on every single fucking police officer in the country to verify that, sure, they definitely did knock and announce themselves repeatedly before breaking down the door. They don't have that, or at least they claim they don't have that body camera footage, but ban no-knock warrants, because despite the fact that the warrant was upgraded, plenty of witnesses said that they never announced themselves, and all they heard was banging, and they used a battering ram to knock the door down. There's a reform that could have avoided this situation, bud.
Both innocent, both acting rationally and legally on both sides.
Yep.
You have both of them reacting appropriately.
And if you add, just one little flavor here to add, is they thought Breonna Taylor was alone. So they go into a place where they believe it's only Breonna Taylor. Now there's two people in there, and the other person is shooting at them. Now, if you can't take this in the context of the investigation, they're trying to break up a drug ring here. They've already arrested Jamarcus Glover, the drug dealer. What's their assumption? Probably in that moment that, and I don't know if there's enough time.
If they already arrested the drug runner and they just thought Breonna Taylor was holding onto onto the drugs, why would they think that she was a threat? If she had no ties to the drug running itself, if she had no criminal record, if she didn't have a history of violence, why did they assume that a search warrant would be met with violence? It was a search warrant, not an arrest warrant. They weren't going there to arrest Breonna Taylor for anything. They were going to search her house for drugs. They didn't need to go in plain clothes. They didn't need to knock down the door. They needed to knock, announce themselves as police. Why did they have to do it at 3 a.m? They could have done it at another time when it would have been less suspicious for police to be coming to your door, knocking on the door and announcing, police, we have a search warrant. Tons of things that could have changed about this situation that would have led to a different outcome, and the police mishandled all of it.
Time to really noodle this all out, but that he is probably working with Jamarcus Glover there to, now that they know he's already arrested, they're there trying to get rid of whatever is in the apartment. Now they're wrong.
Yes, just assume the black guy's a criminal.
He shot a cop, and cops, when they get shot, are going to shoot back at the person who shot them. This is not brain surgery here. This is very obvious.
And I don't even think you need to say he shot a cop, because shooting a cop is one thing, but when you're in fending for your life and you don't know it's a cop, shooting anyone with a gun who is legally who's illegally holding a gun is going to shoot back.
Yes, he's justified. A separate point from the police perspective. They just
Really, because during the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, there was a guy there that was illegally holding a gun, and he didn't shoot at Kyle Rittenhouse despite the fact that he shot a bunch of people. Kind of invalidates your little claim there, buddy.
Went into a house with a warrant and got shot. So now they fire back. There's another cop who gets charged with a lesser crime. We can talk about that later. But the bottom line is she gets hit.
Yeah, he got charged with damaging drywall in another apartment.
He doesn't. And she passes away. This is not a...
She didn't pass away. She got shot and killed. She wasn't just standing in the hallway and suddenly had a heart attack. She didn't suddenly age 60 years and die of old age. She got shot and killed. They used the whole pass away thing. Charlie Kirk used the whole pass away thing. Candace Owens did the whole pass away. She didn't just pass away. She didn't just pass away. She was killed. She got shot. That's not just passing away. Passing away is when you're an old person laying in bed and you just go to sleep and don't wake up. That's passing away. She was murdered.
A case of racism. It's a good case if you want to talk about the libertarian critique of police over, using...
And not even a no-knock.
Yeah, it wasn't even a no-knock. It's just,
3 o'clock in the morning.
3 o'clock in the morning. To me, there's absolutely no reason to execute this warrant in this way, which is another part of the...
Do we actually agree on something that he just said? There was no reason for them to execute this warrant in that way.
Investigation that's not complete. So we have no idea whether we'll find things that led to the warrant wrongly being served.
So everything that we know, the warrant has nothing to do with the cops. And the warrant, if that was fudged at all, that means the district attorney should be in trouble. But the warrant is exactly the same thing we've been saying about Donald Trump's impeachment. The warrant system in this country is bad. It's bad.
The impeachment was completely legitimate. The Senate just voted on party lines. This is a completely different situation.
That is reform all of us can get on the bandwagon with. Mm-hmm. So I want to take it now here to Joe Biden. I want to take it politically.
Okay, so I'm not going to discuss the election specifically for professional reasons. I'm not allowed to. However, everything they just said, it sounds like they're siding with Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend. And yet they're defending the police who killed her. Let her bleed out for 20 minutes and then she died. Didn't give her medical attention. And the only police officer that was charged in the case was charged with damaging drywall in another person's apartment. Putting somebody else in danger. Breonna Taylor didn't present a threat to the police officers. The majority of their training goes into firearm training and hand-to-hand combat to subdue suspects. They spend a shit ton of time at the range. They should be able to fire accurately. Why couldn't they shoot accurately? If they thought that her boyfriend was a threat and was trying to kill cops, the only person in their minds... if everything they had done was justified, which it's not, but let's just, grain of salt, devil's advocate, let's just say for the sake of argument that everything they did was justified, they did everything by the book, and they felt that the boyfriend was a threat and needed to be neutralized. The only person that should have been taking rounds was the boyfriend, not Breonna Taylor. When they found out that Breonna Taylor did take a round, or multiple, they should have given her first aid. They should have given her medical attention, and they didn't. They let her bleed out, and they let her die, and they're walking free. It's disgusting.